All right, let's open with a word of prayer. Father, we come before you right now by the precious blood of the Lamb on this, your holy Shabbat. What an awesome thing it is to be able to gather together as your people Israel, natural branches and grafted in but one in Messiah Yeshua. Father, we just ask that you'd open the eyes of our understanding today, that you would enlighten us to the hope of your calling as we study your Torah. And we give you the praise, the honor, and the glory for it. B'Shem Yeshua, Mishyakenu, in the name of Yeshua our Messiah, we pray. Amen and amen. All right, Nitzavim, which means standing in English, comes from Devarim or Deuteronomy 29:9 through 30:20. And we're going to start reading in 29:9. Therefore, keep the words of this covenant and do them, that you may prosper in all that you do. All of you stand today before Yahweh your God, your leaders and your tribes, and your elders and your officers, all the men of Israel, your little ones and your wives, also the stranger who is in your camp, from the one who cuts your wood to the one who draws your water, that you may enter into covenant with Yahweh your God and into his oath, which Yahweh your God makes with you today, that he may establish you today as a people for himself, that he may be God to you, just as he spoke to you, and just as he swore to your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov. I make this covenant and this oath not with you alone, but with him who stands here with us today before Yahweh our God, as well as with him who is not here with us today. So this covenant was made with everybody. Basically, like Paul said on the day of Shavuot, this is for you and your children, and for all those that are far off, as many as Yahweh will call. So this covenant, and we read last week, it's beside the one that was made with us at Mount Sinai, which covenant our forefathers broke. Now, Hebrews gives us insight as to what that covenant was, because it says he takes away the old that he may establish another. And it talks about the people and the book being sprinkled with blood and all that. Well, that was what's called the book of the covenant. And it wasn't the whole Torah. It was the actual ketubah that we talked about last week from Exodus chapters 20 through 24. There were about 110 commandments altogether. And it wasn't the entire Torah. It was the initial betrothal. And that's what Israel ended up breaking. I mean, they broke it almost immediately when they made the golden calf. But the Father continued to give us a way back, and then sacrifices were added, and the Levites were taken instead of the firstborn priesthood, and there's some changes made. But that was the covenant that was over. The new covenant includes the Torah that was given to us after the initial covenant was broken, and it's written in our hearts today. The instructions didn't change, so this is a foundation we need to understand. So this covenant he made not just with our forefathers, but it was made with us as well. Now look at Deuteronomy 31:10. It's from next week's portion. It says, And Moses commanded them, saying, At the end of every 7 years, at the appointed time in the year of release, at the Feast of Tabernacles, which we're coming up on in about 3 weeks, when all Israel comes to appear before Yahweh your God in the place which he chooses, so he's talking about when we do it in Israel again, you shall read this law, this Torah, before all Israel in their hearing. Gather the people together, men and women and little ones, and the stranger who is within your gates, everybody in your community basically, that they may hear and that they may learn to fear Yahweh your God and carefully observe all the words of this Torah. There is not separate commandments for Gentiles and not separate commandments for what they would say Israel or Jews. It's one Torah for one people. If you're going to be part of the covenant people of Yahweh, you're going to follow the one Torah, because Torah means teaching or instruction. And it says, and that their children who have not known it may hear and learn to fear Yahweh your God as long as you live in the land which you cross the Jordan to possess. So the Torah is to be obeyed by all, including strangers who are uncircumcised within the commonwealth of Israel. Now, what is this commonwealth of Israel? He just described it there. It's the men, the women, the children, and the stranger within your midst. So Ephesians 2:11 says, Therefore remember that you, once Gentiles in the flesh, who are called uncircumcision by that which is the circumcision in the flesh made by hands, that at that time you were without Messiah, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel and strangers from the covenants of promise, having no hope and without God in the world. But now, in Messiah Yeshua, you who once were far off have been brought near by the blood of Messiah, brought near to the commonwealth of Israel, the covenants of Israel, which is plural, because this is another covenant we just read about last week that we're talking about today, and the God of Israel. He goes on in verse 19, now therefore you are no longer strangers, no longer Gentiles and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the saints and members of the household of God. Now Paul paints a picture of this in Romans 11 as well. He says there's this good olive tree, there's some natural branches broken off because of unbelief, they rejected the Messiah, and then you've got wild olive branches grafted in. The olive tree never changed its identity though, and it's still this one tree. So we've got the strangers who are now become part of the good olive tree. They're wild olive branches still, and that's as long as they remain in the uncircumcised condition. And then you've got the good olive branches, which are the natural branches, which are physical Israel. And we're going to study today a little bit about that, because the branches that were grafted in that were not from the natural tree can become natural branches if they so choose. It's something that not many people understand and don't teach. So the Torah is for all of the commonwealth of Israel, whether they're circumcised or not. Now our Haftorah portion points out that not all will be married to Yahweh. You hear in Christian circles that, hey, we're the bride of Christ. Well, that's not what the balance of Scripture actually teaches. In Isaiah 61:10, it says, I exult for joy in Yahweh. My soul rejoices in my God, for he has clothed me in garments of salvation. He has wrapped me in a cloak of saving justice, like a bridegroom wearing his garland, like a bride adorned in her jewels. For as the earth sends up its shoots and a garden makes seeds sprout, so Lord Yahweh makes saving justice and praise spring up as in the sight of all nations. 62:1, about Zion, I will not be silent. About Jerusalem, I will not rest until saving justice draws her for her like a bright light, and her salvation like a blazing torch. The nations will then see your saving justice, and all kings your glory. And you will be called a new name which Yahweh's mouth will reveal. You will be a crown of splendor in Yahweh's hand, a princely diadem in the hand of your God. No more will you be known as forsaken, or your country be known as desolation. Instead, you will be called, my delight is in her, and your country, the wedded. That's what Beulah means, I guess, in the King James. For Yahweh will take delight in you, and your country will have its wedding. What do you mean your country will have its wedding? Well, I've got a teaching about the Lamb's wife. And literally, the people of Israel are identified with the land. I mean, it's like Yahweh made this land for us to be there with him, to fellowship with him during the 1,000-year reign. And so the country being wedded has to do with the people that are going to have a place in the land, like we talked about last week. Like a young man marrying a virgin, your rebuilder will wed you, and as the bridegroom rejoices in his bride, so will your God rejoice in you. So the nations that just mentioned are the uncircumcised ones who are saved are distinct from Israel. The ones Yahweh will marry through Yeshua and will bring their glory and honor to the Lamb's wife, the New Jerusalem. We see it a little clearer in Revelation 21, starting at verse 1. He says, now I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away. Also there was no more sea. So we're talking about the elements melting with fervent heat. This is after all this. It's the new heavens and the new earth. Then I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. There again, you've got that association with the land, with the city in this case. Then one of the seven angels, verse 9, we're skipping down to there, who had the seven bowls filled with the seven last plagues, came to me and talked with me, saying, come, I will show you the bride, the Lamb's wife. You want to know who the bride of Christ is? This is it. And he carried me away in the Spirit to a great and high mountain, and showed me a great city, the holy Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from God, having the glory of God. Skipping to verse 22. But I saw no temple in it, for the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple. Well, during the 1,000-year reign, Yeshua is going to rule from the temple that he himself builds. So this is obviously after that 1,000-year reign. The city had no need of the sun or of the moon to shine in it, for the glory of God illuminated. The Lamb is its light. And the nations of those who are saved shall walk in its light. And the kings of the earth bring their glory and honor to it. Now notice there's nations that are saved, but they're not part of the holy city. They are not part of the Lamb's wife. They'll bring their glory and honor to it. Its gates shall not be shut at all by day. There shall be no night there. And they shall bring the glory and the honor of the nations into it. But there shall by no means enter in anything that defiles or causes an abomination or a lie, but only those who are written in the Lamb's book of life. So these are only saved people here. But yet you've got the Lamb's wife, and you've got the nations that are saved. So you've got, it's basically the good olive branches and the wild grafted in olive branches. Still the same tree, still the commonwealth of Israel. But there's a more intimate place that we can have as believers with Yeshua that's not necessarily required for salvation, but has to do with intimacy. So it's not all that were saved that are the Lamb's wife, it's only physical Israel. So if you weren't born a physical Israelite, there is a way to become one, like I said. In Exodus 12, starting at verse 43, kind of gives us some insight. Yahweh said to Moshe and Aharon, "This is the ritual for the Passover. No alien may eat it, but any slave bought for money may eat it once you've circumcised him." So no uncircumcised person can eat of the Passover. Now, that doesn't mean if we have a Passover Seder that you have to be physically circumcised, because we're not physically doing the sacrifice right now. That's what the Passover really is. It is the lamb that we can't sacrifice right now, because it has to be done at the Temple Mount with the priest sprinkling the blood on the altar. No stranger and no hired servant may eat it. It must be eaten in one house alone. You will not take any of the meat out of the house, nor may you break any of its bones. The whole community of Israel must keep it. So it's not optional for Israel. If you're not part of physical Israel, it's not for you. But if you are physical Israel, you have to do this. Should a stranger residing with you wish to keep the Passover in honor of Yahweh, all the males of his household must be circumcised. He will then be allowed to keep it and will count as a citizen of the country. So if you want to be a citizen of Israel, this is how you do it. You get circumcised and you keep the Passover. But no uncircumcised person may eat it. The same law will apply to the citizen and the stranger resident among you. Again, the same Torah for the same commonwealth of Israel. There's no separate commands for Gentiles, no separate commands for Jews. Now, the New Revised Standard Version gives us a little more insight in verse 48. It says, "If an alien who resides with you wants to celebrate the Passover to Yahweh, all his males shall be circumcised. Then he may draw near to celebrate it. He shall be regarded as a native of the land," native born, a full-fledged member of physical Israel, but no uncircumcised person shall eat of it. So physical circumcision, after having circumcised heart, by making Yeshua your master and your Messiah, makes you part of physical Israel. Now there's another part of this process as well that is revealed in Ezekiel 47:21. It says, "Thus you shall divide the land among yourselves according to the tribes of Israel. It shall be that you will divide it by lot as an inheritance for yourselves, for the strangers who dwell among you and who bear children among you. They shall be to you as native born among the children of Israel. They shall have an inheritance with you among the tribes of Israel." And so it's whatever tribe that the stranger lives with and has children there, that's where their inheritance is going to be. So you basically, if you weren't born of a tribe, you get to choose your tribe, except for Levi. You have to be born in that tribe. And even in the tribe of Levi, if you want to be a priest, you have to be one of the physical descendants of Aaron. So those are the only two that you can't opt into. You have to be born into those. Now the physical land of Israel is our inheritance, who are a part of physical Israel. Now back to the Torah portion in Deuteronomy 31. "And when all these words have come true for you, the blessing and the curse which I have offered you, if you meditate on them in your heart, wherever among the nations Yahweh your God has driven you, if you return to Yahweh your God, if with all your heart and with all your soul you obey his voice," it's talking about returning to Torah, returning to the instructions of your father, "you and your children, in everything that I'm laying down for you today, then Yahweh your God will bring back your captives. He will have pity on you and gather you back from all the peoples among whom Yahweh your God has scattered you. Should you have been banished to the very sky's end, Yahweh your God will gather you again from there, and there he will reclaim you. Then Yahweh your God will bring you to the land which your fathers possessed, and you shall possess it. He will prosper you and multiply you more than your fathers. Yahweh your God will circumcise your heart and the heart of your descendants, so that you will love Yahweh your God with all your heart and so will live." So again, it's all about the land of Israel. Now this doesn't happen completely until Yeshua actually returns, and that's what has been taught as the rapture in the church. It's him regathering all the scattered Israelites from all the places where he scattered them. We rise up, meet him in the clouds, and we go back and rule and reign with him at Jerusalem. That's the ones that actually are worshiping him, serving him at this point. Now there's a lot of Jews still that they don't believe in Yeshua until he actually returns and they see him, and then they mourn for one as one mourns for a brother. They all repent, all Israel saved, but then they still have physical bodies. When we're raptured, we literally get our glorified bodies. When we see him, we'll be as he is, we're promised. But the physical Jews that only get born again after he returns, they're going to have to hoof it back to Jerusalem. So that's where we get the scriptures about the Gentiles carrying them on their backs and in carts and everything else. So there's two, basically, exoduses. The one that is the spectacular one Jeremiah talks about that we call the raptures, when we all rise to meet him in the air. The ones that have already been born again, we get our glorified bodies early, because really our glorified bodies aren't so we can float up in the clouds and walk through walls. It's so we can be in the presence of the Father. That doesn't happen until after the 1,000-year reign, but we get a special reward because of being faithful during the tribulation period and for the martyrs as well. And so we get our glorified bodies a little bit early. So bringing us back to the land is a major part of our covenant. Christianity's completely missed it. They think we're just all going to go to heaven and be with the Lord and the sweet by and by, and that's not what it's about. It is about ruling and reigning with our Messiah and then being with our Father in the New Jerusalem and the new heavens and the new earth. So it's a little bit different than what we were taught originally. Now in Deuteronomy 11:8, he says, "You must keep all the commandments which I enjoin on you today, so that you may have the strength to conquer the country into which you're about to cross, to take possession of it." So obviously keeping the commandments has to do with our strength in battle. And it has to do with our strength in battle and spiritual warfare as well as the physical. "And so that you may live long in the country which Yahweh promised on an oath to bestow on your ancestors and their descendants, a country flowing with milk and honey. For the country which you are about to enter and make your own is not like the country of Egypt from which you have come, where you, having done your sowing, you had to water the seed by foot as though in a vegetable garden. No, the country which you're about to enter and make your own is a country of hills and valleys, watered by the rain of heaven. Yahweh your God looks after this country. The eyes of Yahweh your God are always on it, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year." So the land is a very special place. Yahweh created it specifically for his people to have a place to dwell with him. Now let's look at our Haftorah portion again. Isaiah 62:4. It says, "No more will you be known as forsaken, or your country be known as desolation. Instead, you will be called, my delight is in her, and your country the wedded. For Yahweh will take delight in you and your country, and will have its wedding. Like a young man marrying a virgin, your rebuilder will wed you. And as the bridegroom rejoicing in his bride, so will your God rejoice in you. On your walls, Jerusalem, I have posted watchmen. They will never fall silent day or night. No peace for you as you keep Yahweh's attention. And give him no peace either until he restores Jerusalem and makes her the pride of the world. Yahweh has sworn by his right hand and by his mighty arm, never again shall I give your grain to feed your enemies. Never again will foreigners drink the wine for which you have toiled. No, the reapers will eat it and praise Yahweh. The harvesters will drink it in my sacred courts. Pass through the gates. Clear a way for my people. Level up the highway. Remove the stones. Hoist a signal to the peoples. This is what Yahweh has proclaimed to the remotest part of earth. Say to the daughter of Zion, look, your salvation is coming. With him comes his reward. His achievement precedes him. And this word for salvation in Hebrew is Yeshua. Your Yeshua is coming. With him comes his reward. His achievements precede him. They will be called the holy people, Yahweh's redeemed, while you will be called the sought after, city not forsaken. So we are connected to the physical land as his physical covenant people, Israel. It's a special union that we've really never been taught about before. Now the reason for this is that he's chosen to place his name there forever. It is literally his land. I told you, I think last week or maybe the week before, that I've got a satellite map of the land of Israel that you can literally see his name written in the hills just north of Jerusalem. It says Yod, He, Vav, He, from the south going to the north. And you'd never see it unless you actually had satellites to be able to take that picture. You'd never known it, but he literally wrote his name in the land. In 1 Kings 8:26 it says, now I pray, O God of Israel, let your word come true, which you have spoken to your servant David my father. But will God indeed dwell on the earth? Behold, heaven and the heaven of heavens cannot contain you. How much less this temple which I have built? Yet regard the prayer of your servant and his supplication, O Yahweh my God, and listen to the cry and the prayer which your servant is praying before you today, that your eyes may be open towards this temple night and day, towards the place of which you said, my name shall be there, that you may hear the prayer which your servant makes towards this place. Now this is why we face the Temple Mount in Jerusalem when we pray the Shema together, because he's literally placed his name there, and Solomon prayed, my face will face that direction when I pray. 1 Kings 9:1, and it came to pass when Solomon had finished building the house of Yahweh and the king's house and all Solomon's desire which he wanted to do, that Yahweh appeared to Solomon the second time, as he had appeared to him at Gibeon. And Yahweh said to him, I have heard your prayer and your supplication that you have made before me. I have consecrated this house which you have built to put my name there forever. It's still there today. The Temple Mount is the only place that sacrifices can actually be done with the priesthood of Aaron. And my eyes and my heart will be there perpetually, which means it's there today. It is a very special land. So he tells us his name is there forever. It means that until heaven and earth pass away, his name is there. Like Yeshua said, one jot, one tittle won't pass from the Torah till it's all fulfilled. Now the physical temple's been destroyed, but Yahweh's name is still there, and Yeshua is going to build the temple again. I mean, there's actually going to be another temple built that John is told to measure in Revelation chapter 11. It says, measure the temple, but the court without leave out, because it's been given to the Gentiles, and they'll tread underfoot the holy city for 42 months. In 2 Thessalonians 2, it says the lawless one will sit himself in the temple of God, proclaiming himself to be God. So there's going to be another temple built. And until the time that he actually sits there and declares himself to be God, if it's like the temple but in Yeshua's time, before it was destroyed, all the believers met there daily. That was the center core of our worship. And so it's what the Torah teaches us. It's how we love our Father, by operating in a system of worship that he set up. Moses set it up as what he saw in the heavenlies, in the tabernacle that Yahweh raised, not man. So it's not Old Testament worship like we've been told before. It's literally cutting edge, what's going on in the throne room today type of worship. So if it's done according to Torah, it'll be a place we want to go, because actually in the land of Israel, that's where that place of protection is going to be, and the temple is going to be what draws his people back so that they can be there and be protected. But then after Yeshua returns, he sets his feet down on the Mount of Olives, and everything, there's a massive earthquake, the mountain splits open, all the hills are leveled, and islands moved out of their places. He's going to wipe out the temple that the Antichrist defiled, and he's going to build another one, which is literally the fourth temple. Zechariah 6 tells us about it, starting at verse 12. He says, then speak to him, saying, thus says Yahweh of hosts, saying, behold, a man whose name is the branch. From his place he shall branch out, and he shall build the temple of Yahweh. Yes, he shall build the temple of Yahweh. He shall bear the glory, and shall sit and rule on his throne. So he shall be a priest on his throne, and the council of peace shall be between them both. So it talked about the physical priest of Aaron just before this passage. So you're going to have both priesthoods operating in this future temple. You're going to have the Levites, the sons of Zadok. If you go back and you read in Ezekiel's chapter 40 through 47, it describes this temple and the worship that goes on there, and the different classes of the Levites, and then the one that's called the prince. And it's a pretty interesting study. Anyway, he's called the branch here, the branch of the root of Jesse. That is the Messiah. Now, as we wait for the return of Yeshua, we have to keep our eyes and hearts on the land that he's prepared for us, because that's part of it. That's where he's going to bring us back to. Now, part of the waiting is keeping his Moedim. So we're about to keep Yom Tertuah. It's going to be Monday or Tuesday. Now, the feasts mentioned in Leviticus 23 are not the feast of the Jews. We've been taught that in Christianity. We don't do that because that was for the Jews. It's the feast of the Jews. But it's Yahweh's holy days. They're his appointed times with his people. In Leviticus 23:1 it says, and Yahweh spoke unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them concerning the feasts of Yahweh, which you shall proclaim to be holy convocations, even these are my feasts. Not the feast of the Jews, not the feast of anybody else, Yahweh's feasts. Now, this is the King James, how it translates these words. The New American Bible gives us a little bit more insight. It says, Yahweh said to Moses, speak to the Israelites and tell them, the following are the festivals of Yahweh, my feast days, which you shall celebrate with a sacred assembly. So Shabbat's the first one mentioned actually in the list, and then you've got the rest of them. And so these are Yahweh's festivals, which is a little bit closer. It's not necessarily feast. It's a festival, and we're to celebrate it with a sacred assembly. That's what a holy convocation is. We all come together as his people and rejoice before him. Now, the New American Standard Version says, speak to the sons of Israel and say to them, Yahweh's appointed times. It's the Hebrew word Moedim, masculine plural of Moed. So they are literally appointed times. They're translated festivals sometimes, but literally they're appointed times, which you shall proclaim as holy convocations or sacred assemblies, like it says. My appointed times are these, and then he goes and mentions them. Well, Moed, you can see the Hebrew spelling there. It is an appointed place or an appointed time, meeting, an appointed time. You can look at it later if you want, but that's basically what it means. And so these are the Moedim, masculine plural, and they're not really feasts, but rather appointed times of sacred assembly. So we can't do all the rituals concerning all the things, because a lot of them you had sacrifices and other things that you were supposed to do, but we can still keep the appointed times, and that's what we do. It's a remembrance, because they all have a meaning, and it's all prophetic. I mean, things have been partially fulfilled in the past. They're going to continue to be fulfilled in the future, so they're very prophetic, and understanding them is really important. Satan knows that, so in Daniel 7:25, we're given this warning, and he shall speak great words, talking about the little horn, the lawless one, what we call the Antichrist. He shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. Now, if you look this up in the original language, this particular chapter is actually not Hebrew, so it's not the word Moedim like you would think, but it's the Aramaic equivalent. It means exactly the same thing. It's written in Aramaic. He would seek to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and a dividing of a time. So it's that same time period that there's a place of protection for those that had ears to hear, but the little horn's going to be making war with the saints and overcoming them for a time, times, and half a time. The ones that are born again during the Great Tribulation, and the ones that didn't listen to the Messiah and didn't go to the place of protection. Now he's going to seek, that's the sign of the Antichrist, seeking to change times and laws. Well, the Sabbath isn't Saturday anymore, it's Sunday now, because that's the Lord's day. That's when he rose, and yada yada. Or, as we're fixing to come up to Yom Tertuah, the biblical term, the rabbis now call it Rosh HaShanah, which literally means head of the year. They say it's the new starting in the new year, which Torah does not say that. It says it's the first day of the 7th month. And there's even other mistranslations that most Bibles use that we're going to look at here. So one of the signs of the Antichrist is to seek change, to change these appointed times. Like I said, Yom Tertuah is not Rosh HaShanah. That was a day invented by the lying rabbis from Rabbinic Judaism. Rosh HaShanah, it's literally a satanic substitution for Yahweh's Moed of Yom Tertuah. Just like Christmas, celebrating the birth of Messiah, that was a day dedicated to the rebirth of the sun god. It was the old winter solstice. It's a day dedicated to the devil. You can't take it and dust it off and mark it as one of Yahweh's days now. It don't work that way. Same thing with Rosh HaShanah. It is a satanic substitution. It's a counterfeit. It's a holy day of Rabbinic Judaism, and it came from Babylon. The whole system of Judaism basically came from Babylon. Now, when they were practicing it correctly, according to Yahweh, it wasn't necessarily considered Judaism. It was considered temple worship, because that was the system that he set up, and that's what he wants. Rabbinic Judaism put these Pharisees in charge, and they completely changed what the worship system was, just like Christianity taking this religion of Christianity, which basically has its roots in Babylon, the holy days, Christmas, Easter. They didn't even change the name of that one. That's the goddess of fertility. And then they changed the Sabbath. They totally profaned the Sabbath, and now they keep the day dedicated to the sun god, Sunday, the first day of the week. So the systems, even though the Christians are precious, the Jews are precious. We need to understand it's the religious systems that the enemy inspired that are an abomination. We love the people, and we want the people to see the truth, and so we pray for them and we love them, but the religious systems are not of God. They are definitely of the devil. The devil is the inventor of religion. Unless it's the one James is talking about, the true religion where you feed the widows and the orphans and everything else. It's walking in Yahweh's love. But Satan's not against religion. He's pretty much the author of it. So we need to come out of Babylon, like he tells us in Revelation, and embrace only Scripture. And Yeshua is our example, because he set the perfect example. He was a man, the last Adam, filled with the Holy Spirit at the River Jordan, did no works until he was baptized in the Holy Spirit. And then he walked as a man, cast out devils as a man, healed the sick as a man, filled with the Spirit of Yahweh, set an example for us to follow, gave us his same Spirit, and says, the works that I do will you do, and greater works. So this is why we know we're supposed to be doing these things. We have the ability inside of us. It's just understanding how to walk in it. And that's what we're going to be studying on Saturday evenings. So in the King James versions of Leviticus 23:4, it says, "Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, In the 7th month, and the 1st day of the month, shall you have a Sabbath, a memorial of blowing of trumpets, a holy convocation." Now guess what? Trumpets is not in the Hebrew. Neither is blowing. Memorial is, but the Hebrew word that is there is actually teruah, and we're going to look at it a little closer. In the Tanakh, the Rabbinic translation, it's a little bit different, but it's still not really accurate. It says, "Speak to the Israelites, and in the 7th month, on the 1st day of the month, you shall observe complete rest, a sacred occasion commemorated with loud blasts." Now that's a little closer to what teruah really means. Shouting is how it's translated sometimes. Acclamation is literally what it means. Young's literal translation says, "Speak to the sons of Israel, saying, In the 7th month, on the 1st day of the month, you will have a Sabbath, a memorial of shouting, a holy convocation." Then the New Jerusalem Bible has the best translation, and it says, "Speak to the Israelites and say, the 1st day of the 7th month will be a day of rest for you, of remembrance and acclamation." So we're supposed to remember. It's the word zikron in Hebrew, and acclamation, which is the word teruah, a sacred assembly. Some of the other translations translated as shouts of joy, a holy calling, remembrance of teruah, set apart gathering, memorial acclamation, a holy gathering. And so you see the Hebrew for zikron, teruah. That's the literal Hebrew spelling in Leviticus 23. Now where do we get Yom Tertuah from? It's from the book of Numbers. We're going to look at that in a minute. So Yom Tertuah is not the Feast of Trumpets. And it's important to understand that because a lot of the Messianics teach that Yeshua is going to return at the Feast of Trumpets because of that scripture in 1 Corinthians 15 where Paul talks about him returning at the last trump. So his returning is associated with trumpets, but Yom Tertuah is not. So it is not the Feast of Trumpets, and we need to understand that. It's another rabbinical lie. All the English Bibles today translate it that way for the most part, unless you get a literal translation or like the Jerusalem Bible or one of those. They translate it correctly, but the other translators followed the rabbinic tradition. I don't know why they did. Maybe they thought the rabbis had some insight or something, but it's a mistranslation. Now, zikron means a memorial or a reminder, remembrance. Well, Judaism doesn't really know what to remember about this day. So they don't really know how to celebrate. That's why they dreamed up the trumpets, I guess. They had to do something. Teruah means an alarm or signal, sound of a tempest, a shout or blast of war or alarm. Now, it's not the actual blast, it's what the blast means. So you can do a teruah with a trumpet, but it's not literally, doesn't mean trumpet, and it doesn't mean trumpet blast. It is an acclamation. It's what the trumpet is acclaiming when it blasts. Because Paul talks about if you blow the trumpet, it's got to have a meaning, otherwise you won't know what it means. Because the trumpets were used to signal the gathering or the going to war or whatever in Israel. And so the sound of the trumpet would make a teruah, make an acclamation, but it was not the actual blast of the trumpet itself that it was describing. It was what it was acclaiming. So according to Leviticus 23, we're supposed to have a memorial and an acclamation. Judaism doesn't understand this moed because they don't understand that Yeshua is the Messiah, so they don't really know what to do with it, as I said. Now, Yom Tertuah, you see the Hebrew next. Yom, Yod, Holam Gadol, Mim. And so that's Yom Tertuah. It's the same word, teruah. In the King James it says in Numbers 29:1, "And in the 7th month, on the 1st day of the month, you shall have a holy convocation. You shall do no servile work. It is a day of blowing the trumpets unto you." They again mistranslated it. Trumpets is not there, and blowing is not there. It is day. The Yom means day, so they get that part right, but the teruah they still mistranslate. Now, Young's literal translation again says it's a day of shouting to you. That's a little closer. And again, the New Jerusalem Bible has it as a day of acclamations. That is the closest translation. A day of signal is what one of them says, Yom Tertuah for you. Another one says, just puts the Hebrew in there. A day of loud acclamations shall it be unto you, in the EMP version. So it's a day of shouting with the voice, or the Jews do it with the blast of the trumpets, but acclamation is literally the meaning of it. And we're to remember something. So what are we supposed to remember on this particular day? What was acclaimed that we need to remember? That's what we need to ask ourselves. If you had no previous religious instruction and you could read Hebrew and you picked up the Tanakh and you read these scriptures, you wouldn't put trumpets in there because it's not there. There's no way, there's no there's no reason to translate it that way. It's just because the Jews didn't know what it meant, so they had to insert something there, and that's what they did. Now, Yeshua fulfilled some aspect of all the Moedim when he walked among us. There's a teaching in Messianic circles that he fulfilled the spring feast when he was here, and when he comes back, he's going to fulfill the fall feast. But actually, he fulfilled some aspect of all of them when he was here the first time. And then Colossians talks about how it's still going to be shadows of things yet to come. There's further fulfillments that we're going to see of them as well. So in Colossians 2:16 it says, "Let no one judge you in food or in drink." Now in the Greek, that literally means in how you eat or how you drink. It's not talking about what you eat or what you drink, because the Bible already says what food is and what food is not. Or regarding a festival, and that's how you keep the festival, not if you keep it or not. Or a new moon or Sabbaths, which are a shadow of things to come, but the substance is Messiah. So all these are pointing towards Messiah, but yet they're a shadow of things still yet to come. So obviously he fulfilled parts of them before, but they're not completely fulfilled yet. There's still things to come that are going to be further fulfilled. So the translation of blowing or blast for Teruah, it's completely rabbinic, and it's not based on scriptural usage at all. In fact, there's scriptures where the trumpet blast and Teruah are used in the same verse, and they're totally unique in their usage. Joshua, we're going to look at Joshua 6:5. "It shall come to pass, when they make a long mashak or blast with the ram's horn, and when you hear the sound, the call or the voice of the trumpet, then all the people shall shout, Ruah, with a great shout, Teruah," the acclamation. Then the wall of the city shall fall down flat, and the people shall go up, every man straight before him. So the blast of the trumpet was not the Teruah this time, and it wasn't Teruah in Hebrew either. Even though it did make a sound, and then kol, it was translated its voice, or the sound here it says, that wasn't the word Teruah either. The Teruah was the shout of the people. The message they acclaimed, just like Yahweh told them to. Joshua 6:20. "So the people shouted, Ruah, when the priest blew the takah of the trumpets. And it happened when the people heard the sound, the kol, or the voice of the trumpet, that the people shouted, Ruah, with a great shout, Teruah. And the wall fell down flat. Then the people went up into the city, every man straight before him, and they took the city." So we can see that Teruah is the shout or the acclamation that's actually made, and this was done by the people. It wasn't done by the shofar in this particular instance. So if it literally meant trumpet or whatever, they'd have had that word in the Hebrew, but it didn't. It's completely different words. There's other scriptures that use Teruah in the same way as follows. I'm not going to really read them all. You can see them here, 1 Samuel 4:5. "When the ark of the covenant of Yahweh came into the camp, all Israel shouted Ruah with a great shout, Teruah, so that the earth rang." So it describes this acclamation, this shouting of the people. And there's a couple of them in Ezra. One in Job, "He will fill your mouth with laughing and your lips with rejoicing," or Teruah. And then you got a number of the Psalms where it uses it. Now, occasionally Teruah is associated with the trumpet, but it's describing the acclamation being made, like I said, and it's not the actual word for the blast or the trumpet or anything. Those are unique words in Hebrew. But it describes the actual signal that the trumpet's signaling, the actual message that it's trying to get across. That's what the Teruah is. So the translation of blast or blowing for Teruah, it's a totally translational error. It's based on rabbinical tradition, and it's not based on scriptural support or the way it's used. And it's just that. It's a tradition. So Yom Teruah is not speaking of anything being blown, neither the silver trumpets nor the shofar, although both have been blown on this day. The silver trumpets were blown at all of the new moon, so it would have been on Yom Teruah as well, but it wasn't unique to Yom Teruah itself. So the way Teruah is used in Scripture, it's to describe the acclamation being made, as I said, the actual message being conveyed, and not a trumpet, and not even necessarily the voice or the shout. It's in obedience to what Yahweh says, or it's the message that the trumpet is conveying. So the translation of blowing or blast, it's inserted. It was just done because of rabbinic tradition. It had nothing to do with the context of Scripture itself. Like I said, if you could read the Hebrew and you read it yourself and you didn't have any religious training, there's no way you'd come up with that translation because it's not there. It's just not. Now in Numbers 10:1, we can see where the silver trumpets were blown. Yahweh spoke to Moshe and said, make yourself 2 trumpets, make them of beaten silver so that you can use them for summoning the community and for sounding the order or breaking of the camp. Whenever they're sounded, the whole community must gather around you at the entrance of the tent of meeting. But if only 1 trumpet is sounded, then only the leaders, the heads of Israel's thousands, must gather around you. When the trumpet blast is accompanied by a battle cry, the encampments pitched to the east will set out. At the second blast, accompanied by a battle cry, the encampments pitched to the south will set out. For breaking camp, the trumpet blast will be accompanied by a battle cry. But for assembling the community, the trumpets will be sounded without battle cry. The Aaronic priests will sound the trumpets. This is a perpetual decree to you for your descendants. So nobody but the Aaronic priests could blow it, not even the regular Levites. It was only the sons of Aaron. So the regular people couldn't blow the silver trumpets. And that's probably why they started blowing the shofar. Even though the Torah didn't command it, it was strictly only for the priests to blow the silver trumpet. So the people wanted to join in, I'm sure, as well. And it became to be a tradition. It's not commanded in Torah, but there's Psalms that actually talk about it. David gives us some insight. In Psalms 81:3, sound the ram's horns at the new moon, and when the moon is full on the day of our feast. Now, there's nowhere in Torah it commands us to do it. It was a tradition that developed because the people couldn't blow the silver trumpets, more than likely. David records it in the Psalms. Nothing wrong with doing it, but if you don't do it, it's not a sin because it's the violation of Torah that's the sin, not the violation of the Psalms or Job or Nehemiah or whatever. You can see other insights on how they did things in those other books, but it's the Torah itself that defines what sin is. It's the violation of the Torah that sin is. Now, when did Yahweh use the shofar? Exodus 19:16. And it came to pass, which is why we blow it when we're doing this, it came to pass on the 3rd day in the morning that there were thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud upon the mount, and the voice of the trumpet or the shofar exceedingly loud, so that all the people that was in the camp trembled. So it was the shofar at Mount Sinai, right before he spoke with his very own voice and gave us his 10 words. He uses it to announce his presence. And it's interesting, the silver trumpet is something that man created. The shofar is made from something that Yahweh created, the horn of an animal that just grows out because he created it to do that. Now, when's he going to use it again? Matthew 24:29 says, immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven. The power of heaven shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn. And they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the 4 winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Now, Paul speaks of this event as well in 1 Thessalonians 4:13. But I would not have you be ignorant, brethren, concerning them which are asleep, that you sorrow not, even as others which have no hope. For if we believe that Yeshua died and rose again, even so them which also sleep in Yeshua will God bring with him. For this we say unto you by the word of the Lord, that we which are alive and remain unto the coming of the Lord shall not prevent them which are asleep. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, with the trump of God, and the dead in Messiah shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. Wherefore comfort one another with these words. So Paul gives us the crucial clue as to which Moed this will be on in 1 Corinthians 15. Starting verse 50, he says, Now this I say, brethren, that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God, neither does corruption inherit incorruption. Now the kingdom lives within us, but the kingdom is going to physically come down to this earth when Yeshua returns. He says, Behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump. For the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. So we know that the Feast of Trumpets is not a correct translation. So when is this last trump blown? Revelations 10:7, I've heard this taught that it's this particular day. But in the days of the voice of the 7th angel, when he shall begin to sound, it's the angels that blow the trumpets, the mystery of God should be finished, as he has declared to his servants the prophets. So some teach that the 7th trumpet of Revelation is the last trumpet, but when Paul wrote 1 Corinthians, Revelation hadn't been written yet, so he wasn't referring to anything that John said. Even though it's interesting, it is basically at the same time. The seventh trumpet, the seventh seal, the seventh bowl, Revelation, the way it's put together, it gives us three views of basically the same events, the same time periods. It's kind of like we've got three views of the throne room. Ezekiel gives us a view into the throne room, Isaiah gives us a view into the throne room, and John gives us a view into the throne room. But they're all from different perspectives. If you read them close, you can see one of them's kind of up looking down, one of them's looking straight on, one of them's kind of down below looking up. Three different perspectives, the same thing. And Revelation's put together that same way. So the sixth seal gives us the signs of the return of Yeshua. The seventh trumpet and the seventh bowl all talk about the kingdoms of the world have become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Messiah. And so he doesn't come back three different times. What it is it's telling us the events that culminate with his return three different ways. And so that gives you a little more information if you're studying Revelation to be able to discern that. It's not linear. Most prophecy is not linear. It kind of jumps around here and there, and you got to look for the clues to kind of piece it together, what part fits with what. That's how you have to study prophecy. He's put it together that way because it's not obvious. You have to have his insight really to kind of get all the pieces and put them together. So Paul was actually referring to a different shofar blast, but it was mentioned in the Torah because it is in concurrent with a Moed, and it's in Leviticus 25:1. Yahweh spoke unto Moshe in Mount Sinai, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, When you come into the land which I give you, then shall the land keep a Sabbath unto Yahweh. 6 years shall you sow your field, and 6 years shall you prune your vineyard, and gather in the fruit thereof. But in the 7th year shall be a Sabbath of rest unto the land, a Sabbath for Yahweh. You shall neither sow your field nor prune your vineyard. Skipping down to verse 8, And you shall number 7 Sabbaths of years unto you, 7 times 7 years. And the space of the 7 Sabbaths of years shall be unto you 49 years. Then shall you cause the trumpet, and that is shofar in the Hebrew, of the Jubilee to sound on the 10th day of the 7th month. In the day of atonement shall you make the trumpet sound throughout all your land. And you shall hallow the 50th year, and proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. It shall be a jubilee unto you, and you shall return every man unto his possession, and you shall return every man unto his family. So we've all heard that song. It's the year of Jubilee, when the lame shall walk and the blind shall see, when the Lord will set the captives free. It's a picture of the return of Yeshua. And it's proclaimed on Yom Kippur. That trumpet blast ends the last Jubilee cycle and declares the new one. So that last trump that Paul's talking about is blown on Yom Kippur. The shofar and the signs in the heavens are a marker throughout Scripture pointing to the day of Yahweh as well, which is the last day that Yeshua talks about in John chapter 6, a number of different times. It's also called the 1,000-year reign of the Messiah. It's 6 days are given to man, but the 7th, you got 6,000-year periods, because a day with Yahweh is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is a day. Peter points that out in 2 Peter chapter 3. So the 6 days of creation correlate with basically 6,000 years that were given to man. And 6,000 years are almost up. When Yeshua comes back, he's going to rule for the 7th day. It's going to be the Sabbath day, and he's going to be ruling with a rod of iron. There's not going to be any more hanky-panky going on during that time. And then we've got the 8th day that Sukkot has. It's not attached to the 7, and that represents the new heavens and the new earth, the new beginning when we're all going to be with the Father. So it's kind of interesting that these things all make these patterns. So the day of Yahweh is basically when Yeshua comes back and rules with a rod of iron. It's the Sabbath. It's not man's day anymore. It's the day of Yahweh. Zephaniah talks about it in chapter 1, verse 14. It says, The great day of Yahweh is near. It is near and hastens greatly, even the voice of the day of Yahweh. The mighty man shall cry there bitterly. That day is a day of wrath, a day of trouble and distress, a day of wastedness and desolation, a day of darkness and gloominess, a day of clouds and thick darkness, a day of the trumpet or the shofar, and an alarm against the fenced cities and against the high towers. And I will bring distress upon men, and they shall walk like blind men, because they have sinned against Yahweh, and their blood shall be poured out as dust, and their flesh as the dung. Neither their silver nor their gold shall be able to deliver them in the day of Yahweh's wrath. but the whole land shall be devoured by the fire of his jealousy, for he shall make even a speedy riddance of all them that dwell in the land. Now, the day of Yahweh, understanding that it's a 1,000-year-long period, it's not just a day of total destruction. It's a day that when Yeshua comes back, there is destruction. It's right there at the armies that have surrounded Jerusalem. A sword proceeds out of his mouth. It destroys them. It says their eyeballs shrivel up in their head, their tongues shrivel up in their socket, the blood runs up to the horse's bridle. So it's a day of great destruction. But he doesn't destroy everybody at that point. In chapter 14 of Zechariah, it says after that all happens that all the people that are left back in the nations have to come up to Jerusalem every year for the Feast of Tabernacles, or they get a curse and don't get any rain. But yet we see, and it's interesting, Gog and Magog, I don't go into it in this study, but they're actually markers. Ezekiel 38 and 39 talks about Gog and Magog, and it talks about this destruction that Yahweh is going to rain down on them. Well, that happens at the Battle of Armageddon, basically. It's when Yeshua comes back and destroys the armies that have surrounded Jerusalem. But then you get Satan, and he's bound for 1,000 years. And then he's released at the end of the 1,000 years, and he goes and corrupts the nations again. And they gather as the sand of the seashore at Jerusalem, and it says Gog and Magog. Well, those are spirits. They're not actually specific individuals. You've got a Gog and Magog that happened in Ezekiel 38 and 39 when Yeshua comes and deals with them at that point. Then after Satan's released again, at the end of the 1,000-year reign, you get another Gog and Magog, same spirit, just different physical people that they occupy. And this time, fire rains down from heaven and destroys everything on the earth. The elements melt with fervent heat at this point. So that's when he wipes out all the people. So in studying prophecies about the day of Yahweh, you've got to understand it's a 1,000-year-long period. Some of the prophets talk about the events at the beginning. Some of them talk about the events at the end, because there's death and destruction at both the beginning and the end. The rest of it, Yeshua is ruling with a rod of iron. And there's still death and curses, because it says if you die at 100, you die as a child. It says a little child will become a mighty nation. There will be longevity. The curse is going to be removed from the earth like before the flood, and people will have the potential of living 1,000 years old. There will be those that have glorified bodies that were serving Yeshua when he returns. When we see him, we'll be like he is. But then there's also physical people having children still yet. And we're going to have a population explosion like we've never seen before. And people are going to be born again during this time. They're going to choose to serve Yeshua. They're going to receive his spirit. We were taught that the wedding supper of the Lamb happens right before he returns in this pre-trib rapture, and we go up during the 7-year tribulation and all this. What happens to the people that are born again during the 1,000-year reign? When do they get married to the Lamb, or do they not have that opportunity? Well, they do, because we don't see the Lamb's wife until the new heavens and the new earth. So the marriage supper of the Lamb doesn't actually take place until everybody has a chance to choose, and then it happens at the very end. So again, the shofar is blown at the day of Yahweh, and it signals his wrath, which lines up with the Yom Kippur judgment. It's deliverance for his people and wrath upon his enemies. Now in Joel chapter 2, verse 1, we see another reference to it. Blow you the trumpet, the shofar in Zion, and sound an alarm in my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of Yahweh comes, and it is nigh at hand. A day of darkness and gloominess, a day of clouds and of thick darkness, as the morning spreads upon the mountains. A great people and strong, there has not been ever the like, neither shall be any more after it, even to the years of many generations. A fire devours before them, and behind them a flame burns. The land's as the Garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolation wilderness. Yea, and nothing shall escape them. The appearance of them is as the appearance of horses, and as horsemen so shall they run. Like the noise of chariots on the tops of mountains shall they leap, like the noise of the flame of fire that devours the stubble, as a strong people set in battle array. Before their face the people shall be much pained, all faces shall gather blackness. They shall run like mighty men. They shall climb the wall like men of war. They shall march every one on his way, and they shall not break their ranks. Neither shall one thrust another. They shall walk every one in his path. And when they fall upon the sword, they shall not be wounded. They shall run to and fro in the city. They shall run upon the wall. They will climb up upon the houses. They shall enter in at the windows like a thief. The earth shall quake before them. The heavens shall tremble. The sun and the moon shall be dark, and the stars shall withdraw their shining. And Yahweh shall utter his voice before his army. For his camp is very great, for he is strong that executes his word. For the day of Yahweh is great and very terrible. Who can abide it? Again, we see the shofar is blown on the day of Yahweh. Joel 3:14, multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision. For the day of Yahweh is near in the valley of decision. The sun and the moon shall be darkened, and the stars shall withdraw their shining. Yahweh also shall roar out of Zion and utter his voice from Jerusalem. And the heavens and the earth shall shake, but Yahweh will be the hope of his people, the strength of the children of Israel. Now I'm going to jump back up there to the previous scripture. It mentions the voice. Here it says Yahweh will roar out of Zion and utter his voice. And the previous scripture was Joel chapter 2. So it mentions basically the same events in just different ways. But it talked about him uttering his voice as well. See, I didn't have that highlighted. Let me see where that is. Okay, verse 11. And Yahweh shall utter his voice before his army, for his camp is very great. So we've got Yahweh uttering his voice, shouting, and then there's a blast of the trumpet as well, it mentioned in chapter 2. So again, the shofar is blown at the day of Yahweh. Now, where else did we see this roar, the voice of Yahweh being uttered? We just read it in 1 Thessalonians 4:16 a while ago. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of an archangel, and with the trump of God, and the dead in Messiah shall rise first. So this day of Yahweh is the day of the rapture, or the catching away. Rapture is not actually in the actual text. It came from the Latin Vulgate, rapture, and it literally in Greek it's harpazo, and it means the same thing. It's a violent snatching away where you don't have any control of it. And that's where the concept came from. But it again is at the day of Yahweh. It's no secret pre-trib rapture or anything like that. Because the church teaches there's going to be a pre-trib rapture of the church, but they don't even understand there's no such thing as a church. That's a mistranslation also. It's the commonwealth of Israel. And the rapture is actually the gathering of Israel. It happens when Yeshua comes back. He sends out his angels to gather his elect, but his angels are also wiping all the people out there, the enemies as well. So we see what Joel is talking about, his great army. These are angels. So again, we see the trumpet in Matthew 24. We saw it once before, but verse 29 says, immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened. So these are the same stellar signs that we saw at the day of Yahweh. It's after the tribulation. The sun will be darkened, the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the power of heaven shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. So again, the trumpet sounds when Yeshua returns. Happens at the rapture, which is when Yeshua returns. Happens at the day of Yahweh, which is when Yeshua returns. These are all signs that you can see. These are the different ways of describing the same event. But it's the stellar signs, the shout of Yahweh, and the voice of the trumpet that all tie it together. Now let's look at 1 Thessalonians again, because he goes on. He doesn't want us to be ignorant, brethren, concerning those that are asleep, that you sorrow not, even as others which have no hope. For if we believe that Yeshua died and rose again, even so them also which sleep in Yeshua will God bring with him. For this we say unto you by the word of the Lord, that we which are alive and remain unto the coming of the Lord shall not prevent them which are asleep. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, with the trump of God, and the dead in Messiah shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. That's when we go and back to Jerusalem with him to rule and reign with him. Wherefore comfort one another with these words. But then we know when Paul wrote this, it wasn't chapters and verses. He continues on with this same thought in chapter 5. But of the times and the seasons, brethren, you have no need that I write unto you. For you yourselves know that the day of Yahweh so comes as a thief in the night. Again, the return of Yeshua is the day of Yahweh. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them as travail upon a woman with a child, and they shall not escape. But you, brethren, are not in darkness, that that day should overtake you as a thief. You are the children of light and the children of the day. We are not of the night nor of the darkness. Therefore let us not sleep as do others, but let us watch and be sober. For they that sleep, sleep in the night, and they that be drunken are drunken in the night. But let us who are of the day be sober, putting on the breastplate of faith and love, and for a helmet the hope of salvation. For God has not appointed us to wrath, but to obtain salvation by our Lord Yeshua Messiah. So there's a place of protection for his people that are listening to the Messiah. We've done teachings on that before. Because the rest of those are given to the little horn. He's given power to make war on the saints and to overcome them. There's going to be a harvest during this great tribulation period like we've never seen before. And they're not going to be in the place of protection. So they're going to be the martyrs at the fifth seal, basically, that the little horn's given power to make war with. And they're going to be resurrected when Yeshua comes back. They're going to have that special reward as well. So Paul gives us our final witness as to Yeshua's return being on the day of Yahweh. Since Yeshua's return looks like it will be on Yom Kippur and not Yom Tertuah, how was Yom Tertuah fulfilled in Scripture when Yeshua came? Well, we see it in Luke 24, starting at, chapter 2, verse 4 of Luke. And Joseph also went up from Galilee, out of the city of Nazareth unto Judea, unto the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house of the lineage of David, to be taxed with Mary, his espoused wife, being great with child. And so it was that while they were there, the days were accomplished that she should be delivered. And she brought forth her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger, because there was no room in the inn for them in the inn. And there were in the same country shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over the flocks by night. And lo, the angel of the Lord came upon them, and the glory of the Lord shone round about them, and they were sore afraid. And the angel said unto them, Fear not, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people. For unto you this day, in the city of David, a Savior, which is Messiah the Lord. And this shall be a sign unto you. You shall find the babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger. And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of heavenly hosts, praising God and saying, Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill towards men. They were acclaiming the Messiah on the day of acclamation. And it came to pass, as the angels were gone away from them into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, Let us go now, even unto Bethlehem, and see this thing which is come to pass, which the Lord has made known unto us, which the Lord acclaimed to us. So the angels seem to be the primary people on the day of acclamation that make the acclamation. They acclaim the birth of Messiah to the shepherds in the field. So this is the true meaning of Yom Tertuah, and also what we're supposed to remember. Well, how to remember it when it was given in Leviticus 23 and Yeshua hadn't been born yet? Well, all the way back into Genesis. As I said before, you've got the Aleph and the Tav in the first verse. Yeshua, who says, I am the Aleph and the Tav in Revelation. You've got the light in Genesis before the sun, moon, and the stars. Chapter 3, you've got the seed of the woman being foretold. It's all about Mashiach, all about the Messiah. So we're to remember that the Messiah is the theme of the Torah. And then we're also to remember that he was born of a woman, born of a virgin, came and died for our sins. So this is what we're to remember. And this is why Judaism has no clue as to what Yom Tertuah is really about. They call it Rosh HaShanah. They don't even call it its correct name. And then they made up some trumpet thing that they do. Has nothing to do with the true meaning, because it's a false religious system, just like Christianity. Christmas has nothing to do with Yeshua either. Now, I also think this is going to be fulfilled in the future as well. We see it in Revelation chapter 14, verse 6. And as I said, this seems to be the day that the angels are making an acclamation. He says, And I saw another angel fly in the midst of heavens, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation, and kindred, and tongue, and people. Now remember, Yeshua said, I won't return until this gospel has been preached to all the nations. Guess what? What's being preached today is not the gospel that Yeshua taught. You got all these Christians out there talking about stuff Paul said and Martin Luther said and all this other stuff. Part of it's true. It's enough to where you can get born again, and at least they give you the Bible so you can go in and actually dig out the truth. But the gospel that's going to be declared into all the nations is accomplished here, because it hasn't been done yet. Saying with a loud voice, or you could say acclaiming, Fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come. And worship him that made heaven and earth and the sea and the fountains of water. Now it's a tradition that you got what's called 10 days of awe from Yom Tertuah until Yom Kippur, which Yom Kippur represents final judgment. It's the day basically that the great white throne judgment is going to be. And you either repent and are going to be declared, well done, my good and faithful servant, or if you don't, he's going to say, depart from me, I never knew you. So it's like we get 10 final days when this angel starts flying around declaring, we know the Messiah is about to return on Yom Kippur. So Yom Tertuah is this day of acclamation when it's time to embrace the Messiah and remember what he's done for us. It's a day for acclaiming the good news of our Messiah and a remembrance of messianic prophecy being fulfilled. Before he came, it was a remembrance of the one that's coming, the prophecies that were given, the pictures that the Torah painted for us. Once he came and walked among us and then died on the tree, it's a day of remembering the ultimate sacrifice for our sin. So Yom Kippur is a picture of deliverance for the repentant and judgment for the non-repentant. The Yom Kippur that ends the old Jubilee cycle and begins the new one is the day of Yeshua's return. It's the day of the last trump, not Yom Tertuah as has been traditionally taught. It's been muddled because of Rabbinic Judaism, the false religious system, and the lack of understanding that they have for rejecting the Messiah. So Yom Tertuah is all about remembering the core theme of Torah and acclaiming Yeshua as the Messiah of Israel to the whole world. And it's not just the job of the angels. They're the ones that are going to get the job done. We have the job of doing it until that day actually happens. He's teaching us the balance of what the gospel really is. And our job is to take this truth as we're learning it to the world with the power and the demonstration that we see that Yeshua did when he did it. We are his body, and we are to do what Yeshua started and continue it on until he actually returns. We have to be ready to proclaim it to the whole world. Like he said in Matthew 5:13, you are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its flavor, how will it be seasoned? It's then good for nothing but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot of men. You are the light of the world. A city that's set on a hill cannot be hidden. He said, I'm the light of the world at one point, but this, he said, you're the light of the world. That's because he is in us now, shining forth. And we literally are the ones that are supposed to be representing Yahweh in this realm now, just as Yeshua did, with his light shining through us. We are the body of Messiah. We're the light of the world. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for the honor of learning about your ways, learning your instructions that you've given us in your Torah, learning who we are in Messiah Yeshua. We just thank you, Father, that you've made us a kingdom of priests. I thank you for the blessing on your people Israel. Yivarechecha Yahweh vayishmerecha. Ya'er Yahweh panav elecha v'hunecha. Yesa Yahweh panav elecha vayasim lecha shalom. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May Yahweh lift up his countenance towards you and give you his peace, his shalom. In the name of Yeshua, our Messiah, we pray. Amen and amen. Hallelujah. We are dismissed.